Hey, welcome back. Another video in a different location this time. We've moved out of the garage into the office, but in today's video, I wanted to talk about why you should become a helicopter pilot before you become an airplane pilot. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because it's something that I've kind of struggled with in my own head, and one of my students called me up this week and he asked me, because he was really going back and forth and debating whether or not he should switch to the fixed wing side and then circle back some point in his life and become a helicopter pilot. And I'm not saying that my answer is the correct answer or the only answer, but I genuinely believe that if you want to become a helicopter pilot, you should do it first, and I'm going to explain my reasons why. Now, the most obvious reason why you should become a helicopter pilot before becoming an airline pilot is if you want to be a helicopter pilot. If your goal is to do and fly helicopters, you should do that first. With my student, he was looking, his biggest point of contention was that the airlines in fixed wing, it's such a cut and narrow, guaranteed type of route. So you go get your fixed wing stuff, you CFI, you become a flight instructor until you build up about 1,000 hours, and then you go to the regional airlines and you do the regional airlines for a couple years, maybe be a first officer and then eventually captain there, maybe, and then you work your way into the airlines. First officer, captain eventually, and it's very cut and dry, very simple, very clean, pretty much a guaranteed job. The airline, I mean, you can link to check out the video I did here or over there about the pilot shortage. There's a pilot shortage on the helicopter side and the fixed wing side, but you know, there's a pretty much a guaranteed job if you go the fixed wing route. The pay is going to be not that great for the first couple years. You're going to have to grind it out, just like the helicopter industry kind of, and then you're going to be flying jets and it's going to be a pretty good time. And then on the helicopter side of things, it's relatively clear. Also, you get your ratings, maybe you become a flight instructor, tour pilot, build up that time, and then eventually you can go do those EMS, police jobs, whatever, but it's not as clear, it's not as guaranteed, and it just isn't as simple looking. And honestly, when he presented that argument, which I've also had in my head, it's like, it is kind of true. The airlines, it just makes a lot of sense, and it's very straightforward, very simple. You build up your time and you get to that next step. That ladder is super clear. With helicopters, it's a little bit less clear. But the biggest problem I have with that is if in the back of your head you want to become a helicopter pilot, as you are climbing those rungs, so let's say you do your fixed wing stuff, you get all your fixed wing stuff, you become a flight instructor, you become a first officer at the regionals, and then you go to the airlines. It is going to be extremely difficult for you at any point to switch back to rotorcraft. It's very hard to jump out of that system that you've been climbing through for maybe over a decade at this point and then fly helicopters. And if you wanted to do that fixed wing stuff first so that you could fly helicopters, it's going to be very hard to pivot there. Now, conversely, if you want to fly helicopters, fly helicopters. But if you go the helicopter route, get all your helicopter ratings, build up that time. Let's say you build up 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 hours of helicopter time, turbine helicopter time, multi-engine helicopter time. You do all the fun, cool stuff, and then maybe at some point you want to pivot to the airlines. Really pretty easy transition. Now, I haven't done it myself, but it's really hard to build up helicopter time, helicopter turbine time, and helicopter multi-engine time. That's really sought after time. Very hard to build that up. So get it out of the way first, and then you can switch over to the fixed wing stuff and get that time relatively easy. If you get all your fixed wing stuff, it's going to be not nearly impossible, it's just going to be very hard to build up the requirements. So like 1,000 hours of helicopter time, 500 hours of turbine time. If you wanted to make that shift later in your career, very hard, but to go from all of that helicopter experience, turbine, multi-engine stuff, and then switch to the airlines, not that bad. Now, I know a lot of you in my audience, very wide range. I've got people younger than me and then people significantly older than me. So you're gonna have to take what I say and kind of put it into your shoes. But when it comes to me, I prefer, the way I've kind of structured this and the way I see my path going is I wanted to do all the helicopter stuff and have the fun, have the adventurous stuff, and really do the cool stuff, and then maybe at a later point pivot to a more structured, safer, fixed wing, jet pilot type of thing. And I can see myself going from helicopter fun, and then when I want to settle down, fixed wing stuff. Now, a lot of people, and you'll hear this a lot from the airline guys, is they'll fly the jets, they'll fly airplanes for a while, and then they want to do something else, and they want to reshift into helicopters, and they can, and it's totally doable. I'm just saying that if you haven't set this up yet and you're doing research on it, I'd say if you want to do helicopters, do it first. It's gonna be easier. Then switch to the fixed wing side, and that transition is gonna be a lot smoother than the reverse. Another thing that always gets brought up is the pay. Fixed wing pay is significantly higher. Airline captains can make lots of money in the hundreds of thousands, in excess of $300,000, but that does not come immediately, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of seniority. You know, for that first decade, maybe by the end of the decade, you're kind of starting to reach into those higher numbers. But when you start your aviation journey, your first 5 years are probably going to be low to mediocre pay. And that's kind of something that you just have to accept, and it's kind of crappy, but everyone thinks that fixed wing pays more, and I think it probably does a little bit. But you know, the first officers on those regional jets, you know, flying the Pilatus jets or whatever, doing that regional work, they're not really getting paid that much. You know, a salary of 40, 50, 60, 70 maybe thousand, pretty average. And this is just from anecdotal evidence that I've heard, but then the captains on those regional jets, 90, 100, 110, nothing bad, like that's not bad pay, but it's not that great. And you know, the helicopter industry is pretty much matching that. You know, if you take a fixed wing flight instructor and a helicopter flight instructor, both with 1,000 hours, they're probably very similar in pay. And then if you take like a 1,500 hour helicopter pilot flying tours in Alaska or something, and then you take a 1,500 hour regional pilot flying those regional routes, probably making relatively similar, probably within $10,000 or $20,000 of each other. And then once you start getting into like the big jobs, like the airlines for the fixed wing guys and the helicopter EMS, police stuff, then you can start to get some higher numbers on the fixed wing side. But honestly, it's relatively comparable. And let's say that you're a helicopter pilot and you stick with that company for 10 or 20 years, you could be making $150,000, $200,000. So you're gonna be making fine money, and the quality of life is better. And I've talked about why I think being a helicopter pilot is just an overall better job. But the point of the video is, if you're thinking about becoming a pilot and you want to be a helicopter pilot, do that. If you want to be an airline pilot, do that. Do whatever you want to do. But if you're looking at a strategic example and you're thinking about potentially doing both, do the helicopter thing, get that time, get all those certifications, and build up that time. It's really valuable, critical time. And then you can pivot to the fixed wing, relatively easy. It's just a lot harder to go backwards. So like I said, take this all with a grain of salt. I have not done it. I am still building up on my helicopter time, but I can see myself switching to the fixed wing side, and I can already tell that I'm in a better position, that I've done my helicopter stuff first. But let me know if you guys agree with this, what your thoughts were, and more specifically, let me ask you this question: what was your route? If you are a helicopter pilot, a fixed wing pilot, let me know your route and where you see yourself going with that. Or if you're retired, what did you do and what do you wish maybe you had done differently? But if you found yourself enjoying this video, smash that like button. Guys, I love making these helicopter videos. I love talking about aviation. If you find yourself enjoying it, subscribe. I really appreciate it. I love having this community to grow, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.